Greetings, my name is Shammeh and I'm here to talk about Triumph and Treachery, Warhammer Fantasy expansion that they released to facilitate games of 3 to 5 players. Warhammer Fantasy games are almost always 1 versus 1. So this has brought additional rules to clarify turns and victory points, and it's also added additional things into the game. We just played a game with it. I'm going to be uploading it later, but in the meanwhile I wanted to review this expansion. We actually had quite a bit of fun with it, and the rules are fairly simple, so it's not too difficult to understand. First of all, let's see what's actually in the kit that it comes with. You see it's got a nice cover here, and an actual book which is about the same size as your regular army books. The actual rules section of this book take up about 5 to 6 pages, so it's not difficult to learn. It's very easy to surmise for your friends. You also have some victory tokens that come in a pouch here. Now these are actually cardboard. The designs are fairly cool, and the patterns are nice. They're different for each side, but they are cardboard, so they're gonna wear out pretty damn fast. We've already decided to replace the cardboard coins with something more substantial that we've gotten from other sources. But the actual cards that come with it, there are 2 different types of cards that come with this set. The first being turn cards. What you do in order to determine turns for when you're using the Triumph and Treachery special rules is at the beginning of the game you'll shuffle these up and give each player a different kind of card. So in this instance this would be the axe, shield, whatever it may be. You remember which indicates you yourself as a player, and then at the start of the turn, at the start of each turn, you will shuffle these up and then pull one out. So whoever represented the axe, which in the last battle was me, would get to take their turn. And then once that player has finished their turn, you'll draw another card, and then the player with the staff would go next. That sort of thing. So you can wind up taking 2 turns immediately in a row if you were the last person during a round, and then the first person next round. And you don't know who's going to go next, so the planning for the eventualities of what can happen, there's a lot of strategy involved, but there's also a lot of random chance too. So you have to be prepared for a lot of eventualities. For the other cards in the deck, these are for the other mechanics of how a phase works, how the turns work. In a phase, when it's your turn, because it's been decided by pulling the cards, you'll start off in the movement phase, and you'll have to declare somebody your enemy for each phase. So during a phase, let's say it's a 4-player game, and there's 3 players. You'll choose one of those players to be your enemy for the movement phase. During that phase, the other players are neutral, and you cannot affect them in any way, shape, or form. They have units that are, all of their units are counted as impassable terrain, and you cannot declare charges against them at all. You can only charge the units of the person you declared as your enemy during that phase. And then you declare in the shooting phase another enemy. It can be the same person, or it can be somebody different, but you can only shoot at that enemy. And for everybody that is not declared an enemy, anybody that's declared neutral, they will roll a dice. And if there's more than 1 neutral person, so if you're playing in a game that's more than 3 people, you roll a dice and you'll get one of these treachery cards on a 6. I didn't roll a 6. But if you roll the 6, you get a treachery card, and at the start of the game, I believe you will get 2 of these as well. Because it's the start of every round, people with equal victory points, if you're equal all across, you will get 2 of these treachery cards, up to a maximum of 5. You can't hold more than 5. As soon as you get more than 5, you have to discard. You can't play them. You'll have to discard them immediately. But you'll get one of these if you're declared neutral and you roll a 6, and you'll get at least 1 during the start of each turn. At the start of each turn, the person with the most victory points currently, which are decided by these tokens, I'll get to those later, they indicate who is currently winning. And it's the coins are called your pay chest. So the person with the highest pay chest only gets one of these. Everybody else gets two, except for the person with the lowest pay chest. He only gets three. Like I said, up to a maximum of 5. And now each of these cards, there are some really interesting cards, and you can get into runs of them as well. Because once you've gone through the entire deck, you reshuffle it and then pick from it again, obviously. And in the 4-player battle that we had, which lasted 6 turns, we reshuffled this deck of cards at least 2 times, most likely 3. So you can go through them pretty quickly, especially if you get consistent rolls of 6, or if the same person is low, or if you consistently have one person that's lower than the others. You'll go through these cards really quite quickly. And you'll have certain things that these cards can do. Sometimes they'll require a cost, and they all will tell you when exactly they take effect. So, for instance, this one, which is Masterstroke, it's play if you win a combat against the player that deployed on your left. You receive 2 extra brass victory tokens if you won the combat, yeah. So, as I was saying before, these tokens will determine who wins in the game. You always start off with 2. The start of the game, you have 2 brass tokens, which are the lowest denomination. They each indicate 50 victory points for each of these brass or copper tokens. And 3 of these brass or copper tokens will get you a silver, which represents 150 points of victory points. For 250 points, you'll get a gold, so that's 5 copper. And for 1500, so I think that's like 30 or something like that, you'll get a plate. And so during the game that we just played, it was kind of a bit counterintuitive for us because the way it traded up, it went 3 to 1 for silver, so we thought it would go 3 silver to 1 gold. It actually goes 2 silver and 2 copper to 1 gold, which is a little bit off, and then it goes like 5 gold to 1 plate. None of us ever got to a plate, but we kept it consistent of going up by denominations of 3, just because I had explained it to the game before the game started, but I wasn't all that clear about it, and I forgot myself as well. So that's what you use to determine who wins. I'll explain in a second how you get those victory tokens, besides stuff like the cards and starting with 2. But there are some that will actually require you to expend brass tokens in order to do something. So it would be particularly good, like a bribe, I believe, in here, where you can tell a unit to not fire. Or here's one. I actually kind of like this one. Nobody used this during the game that we played. It's called Bad Luck, Sir, and it's discard 2 brass victory tokens to change a successful Lookout Sir roll into an unsuccessful Lookout Sir roll. So that would require you to pretty much spend 100 victory points in order to make somebody fail a Lookout Sir roll, which could be pretty amazing if used at the right time. So there's a lot of strategy about what you hold on to for cards, because you'll almost always wind up with more cards than you can actually use. And so you'll want to pick what fits, or what you think will be most useful. There's a lot of magic hate in here. One's like the Trickster's Ring, which when a wizard casts a spell, you can use it, and any double rolled to cast that spell will cause a miscast. And if they get irresistible, it will miscast as well as normal, obviously. But there's a lot of interesting potential here, and it really gives your people that are not playing their current turns something to do. Because if, let's say, somebody is focusing most of his phases against one person because he's closest to that other person, the other people will be getting cards for it, and they can totally screw over the combats on the other side of the table, or they can make them go in a person's favor. In the instance of the game that we were playing, one person was clearly in the lead for quite some time, so he got sort of shut down by quite a lot of the other people. They would declare him the enemy during their, like, for example, I was playing Undead, my shooting phase is non-existent, but you still have to declare somebody an enemy. So I would declare him the enemy during my phase, so he wouldn't get a chance to get more of these treachery cards, whereas the other two I wasn't as worried about. I didn't want to get him even farther ahead, sort of thing. So for the victory points, as I said, when you start off the game, you have 2 copper, and in a phase, when you've dealt damage, when you do something that would normally get you victory points in a game, you will get victory points at the end of that phase as tokens. So let's say, for example, you killed something worth 105 points. That will get you, for every full 50 points, it's got to be full, it doesn't round up, and it doesn't, like, it has to be full, it will round down, essentially. So if it's worth 105 points, and you've killed it with shooting, you'll get 2 copper tokens for doing that in that phase. And then if nobody else managed to get victory tokens during that phase, you will get an additional 1 for being the player that got the most out of that phase. And that goes for every single person's phase, like for all 4 phases of every single person's turn. You will also get a brass victory, or a brass or copper victory token for winning a round of combat. So even if you didn't destroy a unit, because if, let's say, you destroy a unit worth 200 or 250 points, you would get the equivalent amount of victory points for that. You'll, for winning the combat, you will get one of these tokens as well. So if you charge into somebody, beat them in combat, even if they don't go away and you didn't kill any characters or anything worth anything, you'll still get a token, and then you'll get another token because you were the one that got the most out of that phase. Whereas if you charge somebody and your opponent beats you in close combat, regardless of what you killed, if he beats you by combat resolution, then he gets that token, and he gets the additional token for being the person that got the most out of that phase. So almost all of the scenarios in the Triumph and Treachery, and there are 3 special scenarios in this book, they almost all are based on the person with the largest pay chest at the end of the game wins. And there is no restrictions on trading any of your treachery cards, except for the hand limit, and your victory tokens. So if you diplomatically say to a person, I'll give you 2 brass coins to not do something, or 2 brass coins to declare somebody else your enemy for this coming phase, that is absolutely a possibility. You can do that. Their only rule for trading in this game is that there is no requirement for a person who reneges on a deal to give his tokens back to somebody. If you ask somebody to do something, give them 2 coins, and then they don't do that, there's no rule stating that he has to give them back to you. It'll give him ill will from the other players and from you. Nobody might trust him, but there's no requirement in the rules for him to do it. So it's going to be a lot of negotiating with your friends. There's quite a lot of backstabbing that's possible, especially with some of these cards and what you can do. In the game that we played, one of these cards, I could pay a token in order to make a unit unable to use the Steadfast or Horde special rule for a turn. I could have used that to make a unit of Night Goblins break from Chaos Warriors, because they got beaten soundly in combat, but they were still steadfast near the general's leadership. So I could have made them run, which would have given that player a significant amount of victory points and taken that unit off the field. But I didn't do that because Chaos was already ahead, and I particularly perceived the Orcs as a threat. They were far enough away I was almost never going to get them in combat anyway, so I held off doing that. But you, unless it specifically states, some of these have a range, like there's like a smoke bomb or a poison gas bomb that you can use on an enemy, but it specifically states that it's got to be within 12 inches of one of your own units. Most of the cards here you can affect the board, so you can do on anybody. Let's say you've got like a unit right here and a cannon on the other side of the table. You can bribe that cannon to not shoot. Or there's itching powder that makes a unit, when it's elected to shoot, you can use that card, and it makes it so they're unable to shoot. They're really interesting, and we did have a lot of fun with it, and I think that the turns went significantly smoother because of these new rules. Like, we've played multiplayer games a lot before. We've got 5 people, so it almost always lends itself to at least a 3-player game. And with these rules, it really clarifies the turn sequence and stuff like that. It doesn't particularly make it go faster. I think it did go by a little bit slower, but it solidifies all of the rules so you know that what you're doing is correct. And I really do like that. It was pretty much this book was made for our group of people and anybody like our group of people, where you have an odd number of people playing at any given point in time and you don't want to leave people out. So even if you're going to have 3-player battles, 4-player battles, or anything like that, I actually highly recommend the Triumph and Treachery set. It's pretty cool. The actual coins themselves, like I said before, cardboard, they're nothing special. They're not going to last, so they're not anything worthwhile. But the cards look beautiful, and they are good quality. And especially like the turn cards, it's a good thing to have them. You could use like a token system or something like that, but it's just not as cool. So I like the cards. I like the tokens. The rules are easily surmised. Like, you will not need to get this book if you you only need one of it, pretty much. For your entire group, you're only going to need one of these books. And everybody can just look it over and read it in like 5 to 10 minutes, and there will be no questions whatsoever. There are rules for mercenaries in these books, which we haven't started using yet, but they will be used for our second campaign. So they're going to be used when we actually go into the second campaign. I was making up rules for mercenaries, but these ones seem pretty solid as it is. Essentially what it is you can take, I believe, it's 100 points for every 500 that's in your base army. So that would be 400 points for a 2,500 point list from another army book. It specifically states it can't be from your army book, so you can't get another 400 points from your army, whatever it is that you might be taking, but somebody else's army. It's really to encourage you to buy more models. That almost always is how it goes. But it gives you an option to take other people's units if you want to start collecting another army, or if you have multiple armies. There are many people that do. It's interesting in that they have some special rules to go with the mercenaries. For one, across the board, all mercenaries have -1 to their leadership that is in their base book. So that kind of makes up for the difference, the fact that you're getting, you can min-max with other people's units, especially because the mercenaries do not have any kind of requirements in the way of like core, special, rare. You can put them all into one character. In fact, one of the examples they have in that book is of a Dark Elf Lord on a dragon with like 5 shades. So he would at least be at -1 to his leadership, but you can absolutely still take that. And they have a special rule for the mercenaries as well, that you can pay brass tokens. You can pay brass tokens to make them neutral for a phase, to make it so that they won't do anything during a phase. So it's pretty interesting. We haven't started playing with that yet. Obviously, you don't want to spend your victory points just to prevent a unit from attacking. But they also have a rule where if they pass a rally check, like if they've fled and they successfully rally, you then roll a dice. On the roll of 1 to 4, they'll hire out to somebody else, and on the roll of 5, 6, they'll stay loyal. That sort of thing. And I believe on the roll of 1 to 4, they go to the person with the highest pay chest, or something along those lines. So it is interesting. It especially is interesting to think of the possibilities if your group's going to be playing mercenaries. Think about the possibilities of lists, because there are so many very, very good units that that have great synergy with units from different armies. The only requirement of the mercenaries is that they have to have a captain. So you have to have one character that is their leader, and he essentially has an inspiring presence of 6 inches, so people can use his leadership within 6 inches rather than 12 for the mercenaries. That's it, really. There is a Triumph and Treachery card that will allow you to use your general's leadership for one leadership test on like a neutral unit or something like that. So you can sometimes give your leadership bonus from your general to your mercenaries. But other than that, I believe they count as a different force, so they can only use their captain's leadership. So taking a horde of Skaven slaves for your mercenaries might not be the best thing ever. Other than that, whether it's worth $100, that's up to how much you play multiplayer games, I'd say. If you have a group of 5 people, I'd say it's absolutely worth it, especially if you play at a consistent rate. And if you're just interested in playing the game, it's not too much more than most army books, and you do get the book, and the cards are really what's worth it. And it's not like you'll be able to ever replicate the cards. Like, you can absolutely learn the rules from this book just by reading it once, and you probably won't ever forget it. You can use tokens from wherever else you want. You can come up with player turn tokens or player turn cards. That's not hard, but they have these cards which are unique, interesting, and full of flavor, and they do make the game more fun. So I'd say on the whole, totally worth it for a large group of people. Individually, or if you play, it's still probably worth it if you consistently play 3-player games. Like, if your group of people is 3 people and one person is always out of the loop, or you're playing weirder 3-player games where you don't know for sure how the rules would flow, then yeah, go ahead and get it. That's all I've got to say about Triumph and Treachery. I will leave you now. Say thank you for watching. You can find out more about us at ma-gaming.com or on our YouTube channel, which is where this is posted. So have a good night, and I'll see you guys later.